Hey everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We're super excited to have all of you. Up next, we have Cotter. He's a mycologist, microbiologist, and retired landscape designer who's been cultivating mushrooms both commercially and experimentally for more than 30 years. He's the author of Organic Mushroom Farming and Mycoremediation and has won numerous awards for his work. His ongoing research projects include bacterial interactions with fungi, mycopesticides, novel antibiotic discovery, and the isolation of native mycorrhizal species for bioregional-specific inoculations with plants. In 2022, Track sold Mushroom Mountain, which he founded in 1996 to pursue his interest in psychedelic-assisted therapy and to focus on research in the medical field. Track currently is co-owner of Blue Portal, a mycological-friendly focused company specializing in psychedelic-assisted therapy, medicinal innovations, and industrial applications of mushrooms. And I can say for myself, when I first got into mushrooms in 2010, Track Cotter was one of the first. I looked at his book at Mycoremediation, and it was one of the things that got me into culturing mushrooms and really learning about the possibilities of what mushrooms can do for our world. So it's really a pleasure for me to have Track here back again, and so everybody give it up for Track.
Thank you for having everybody back. This is my second time at the Telluride Mushroom Festival, so definitely looking forward to the third and fourth and 100th. So I'm going to talk about microremediation today. It's a little bit different than what I've normally discussed, but given the path that these hurricanes are taking lately, I don't know, I'm up in Clemson, Greenville area. Has anybody been to Asheville lately? Anybody seen what's going on up there? So a lot of my clients and friends live up in Asheville. That's not a picture of Helene, by the way, but listen, I don't know who had hurricane insurance in Asheville. I don't think anybody did. But that was a major, massive event. And I saw it coming. I mean, I'm an ecologist, I'm a microbiologist. And I lived through 4 major hurricanes in Florida and South Carolina, right through the eye, all 4 of them. And I saw that thing coming, and I told everybody in the upstate, the ground is wet, the trees are not ready for this, there will be major devastation. And nobody was prepping out there. I was at the store, and I was prepping, and anyway, I was fine. I was camping out making pancakes for a week, you know, I was ready, but the area was just devastated. So, what can we do with a situation like this? How can mushrooms help? I'm a cultivator, I'm a micromediator, and I look at this as an opportunity, like we say, to make lemonade out of lemons. We've got this debris everywhere, the landfills are filling up, and even in my area, in Clemson, South Carolina, there are trees just piled up along the street, right? There's nowhere for it to go. So what can we do with that wood debris? We can use a whole tree. We can remill it for lumber. We can inoculate it. We can make food. We can chip it into fine little pieces and particles, mix it with sand and filter water. So there's a lot of things you can do with fungi. So what can mushrooms do? Before I get into the biology lesson, right? They're really good at biological, chemical, and industrial degradation of different compounds. Biological is easy, right? To make a micron filter out of mushrooms is actually very easy. Chemical degradation, if you want to take chemicals out of the system, that takes time. And you really have to know what is called the contaminant of concern, COC, by the EPA. So what are these different things? Pesticides, herbicides, chemicals, biological heavy metals. All right, so here's one lesson today, is that fungi are very efficient at hyper-accumulating heavy metals across their cellular walls. So you got to be very careful about where you hunt mushrooms. Right? So if I was to give you a quiz, would you hunt mushrooms on a golf course?
No.
a rock concert. Let's do it again with a little more enthusiasm. Anybody filming? Mushrooms don't produce seeds, they produce nobody's here to catch me. It's got a crowd surf. They produce spores, and spores are, every spore has half the genetic information to produce another viable mushroom. It's mycelium. They have to mate, they have to land, the same, nightclub, and they have to mate, and they have to combine genetic material, and then they take over the world. That little part of the world. Mushrooms create heat, carbon dioxide, and they sweat. Right? So they swim through their own sweat. Everybody do this. Everybody swim. Everybody. Make sure. Not everybody's swimming. Everybody's swimming. I'm going to keep going. Keep going. They're swimming through their own waste, their own septic tank, right? And they are sweating chemical keys, right? And this is important, that mycoremediation and medicinal mushrooms is not that far apart. Mushrooms recognize, they detect things from their environment, and they are able to create novel metabolites and compounds on demand. And that's how mycoremediation works. It's fascinating. Like you see here, you see the hot tips, mushrooms create heat, and they swim and they drill their way through the environment, and they're learning from their environment. And then they sweat novel metabolites to break certain things down. Or, in the case of a biological threat, they would attack this fungus. Oops, can we go backwards? They would attack this fungus or bacteria and then spread out and just carpet bomb this other biological with a novel metabolite, a novel antifungal compound. But what if it was a pesticide or a herbicide? So what I'm telling you is that, listen, mushrooms are desperate. They can get desperate. A mushroom is a fruity body, it's a defense mechanism, and when they run out of food, they get desperate. So they turn to non-organic compounds like pesticides and herbicides. They look at the molecules, they're starving to death, and they start to cleave them apart and use them as a food source. It is awesome, right? So I'm watching Fungi in the lab. This is what I do on Friday nights. I don't have cable, I've got Shrink TV, it's free. And you've got, I'm experimenting with different herbicides and pesticides, and this is atrazine. And I've tested these mushrooms over and over in the lab. And I put them on gel at different, really strong concentrations of different pesticides. And it's a little bit torture in a way, but at 3 times the label rate of atrazine, this oyster mushroom, which have chemical keys, like a skeleton key, that are just amazing, right? And they shift their genetics. And here it is after 10 days, the label rate, they actually just colonize very quickly, and we're able to break down the atrazine. But here we are at day 10, this mushroom, this oyster mushroom, sat there and pondered for 10 days. And I put it back in my incubator, and I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, this is toxic, this mushroom can't do it. This is the threshold for that particular fungus and the concentration. Watch this, on day 10, I came back and checked on day 12. And completely figured it out. That is awesome. This is why I'm so passionate about fungi. I get up, man, mushrooms are smart, they're chemically smart, right? They have the chemical tools to do this. They need to survive. So then I started pouring gels, the blue and the red represent parts per million, parts per billion. So I would pour different concentrations, and then I would put the poor little mushroom chunk on one side and say, okay, you're going to come that way, and you're going to eat it, right? And we're going to see how far you can get, right? So that's how we test fungi. And even so, I put the same strain on a picture plate with pure motor oil. That's right And then they found in the Amazon, they found a polyurethane degrading fungus, right? Pesticides, mycorrhizal. This was a endophyte. This is a fungus that lives inside of leaves. You do not see a mushroom. If we go out and we take a hole puncher and we start punching plants and leaves, even the grass outside, I think this is from a type of ivy. But if we go outside and we start punching these leaves, there's 150,000, 160,000 mushrooms in the science right now. There's 5 million that people know about that are living right here in the leaves. It's amazing. So this is a fungus that can break down pure polyurethane in the lab. Does it have an application? Absolutely. Right? So we know nothing about fungi yet. Mushrooms are very tenacious. They have mycelium, that's the body of the fungus. So you see here these very thick cords right at the base of this mushroom here that was pulled out of the mulch. And when you pull this up, this is actually this is a different picture. This is King Stropharia. Does everybody know what King Stropharia is? Or heard of it? This is a vine cap Stropharia. It's very easy to grow. I've got a spawn in my car. I drive around in my car. I've got a spawn in my trunk. And I swear, whenever I see wood chip pockets or anything, I'm following that stuff. I'm a militant mycologist. So this holds 20 to 30,000 times its weight. Right? What can we do with that? Now we're talking repair, right? We're talking erosion repair, shoreline repair. In a situation like this, you can take King Stropharia and put it into the mulch or the logs or different species, and now you can actually hold soil where it should be. Because Asheville, God, whoa, ow, it is gone. I mean, there's cities gone. It's a total disaster. So what we're going to do is go back up, I'll tell you at the end, and we're going to start doing shoreline repair and soil restoration using fungi. But you can do this in your garden, right? You don't have to have a disaster. You can just make soil for your garden. And these are endophytes that I'm looking at now, that the endophytes are in different seeds of different plants. We can isolate them. Once you plant a seed, you are not planting just a seed, you are also planting a fungal component. So if you are harvesting native seeds, like I do, I grow an heirloom tomato, like I have Cherokee purple, everybody heard of that? It's like I love my purple tomatoes, and I harvest the seed. That tomato carried forward a fungal endophyte into the seeds. And so when you harvest a healthy plant, a healthy fruit from a healthy plant, you are carrying forward a fungal endophyte at the same time that will protect it from fungal diseases and bacterial diseases. That's why seed saving is important. You know? That's what it looks like in a plant. It does not harm the plant, it makes more surface area. So how do we start the mycoremediation process? How many of you are growing mushrooms right now? Legally. It's 3 and 2. That's awesome. Alright, so there's a certain component and there's biomass expansion is number 1. How do you build mycelium? Right, I'm going to show you how. So you have to build mycelium, you have to have spawn, there's going to be some spawn, and then you have mushroom production on waste. You can grow mushroom production, mushrooms on paper, cardboard, coffee grounds, all these different things, the storm debris, you can do water filtration. Once it's done, you can compost it, and then you can have chicken or eggs, so you can have vegetable production, so it's like a vegetable system. And this is what I teach in Haiti and Jamaica and abroad, because it makes sense. Mushrooms are like the first responders. They show up. If you can introduce mushrooms to a biomass or a substrate, they will unlock the potential to do so many things. All right, so here is your homework assignment. Everybody ready? No, I have homework today. We're going to talk about recycling. Spent coffee grounds, filters, cardboard, cereal boxes, all this stuff. Paper towels, shredded office paper, tax documents, old cotton clothes, things like that. So be mindful when you're shopping now, right? Because that's the way I am. When I'm navigating through the grocery store, I'm not just interested in what I want as the product, but I'm also concerned about what is packaged. I'm telling you, it's like styrofoam. When was the last time you saw a styrofoam egg carton? I think they disappeared. You know what? And that's great. Now all I see is, I see plastic, yes, but I also see more of the fiber, the cardboard. So make those kinds of decisions, because then you'll be purchasing like you are a mushroom. You'll be like, I can eat that. Right? That's why you start to think like a mushroom. That's why I had to swim through your own sweat. Right? Start swimming through the grocery store. What can I eat, man? I'll eat that cereal box. Security. So what if you had a small, tiny, small piece of mycelium? All right, so this is your challenge. And if I had a tiny, tiny piece of mycelium like this, or even if this was the base of an oyster mushroom. How many of you know what an oyster mushroom is, please? Yeah. So you can buy an oyster mushroom in the store. You can cut off the very base of that mushroom, wrap it in cardboard, and it will come back to life. All right, you just made small. So take that tiny little piece. Look at that, the size of a penny. And then just take a little bit of coffee grounds or wet paper or cardboard or anything like that, and just introduce it to the mycelium. And watch this, in 1 week, you have a little baggie, now you multiply that mycelium tenfold. Without a lab. Not sterile culture. Right? And then you take that bag, and then you make 10 more bags. And now you split it up, and you take a little chunk of that, and now you make 10 bags. But let me tell you, it gets out of control quickly. Because at a factor of 10, I'm telling you, this one little chunk, I'm going to go back, this one little chunk, right here, that one little piece that can fit inside your wallet or your purse through TSA, you can grow 1 million pounds of oyster mushrooms in 12 weeks. That one little piece. I'm not joking about TSA either. So listen, so now you have these chunks of mycelium, now you start dropping them into a bucket, now you're creating fungal biomass. Right? And yeah, you might get green mold, you might have to deal with that. Just scoop out the mycelium that looks good and just stay away from mold. But look, from this one bucket, there's 20,000 miles of mycelium in a 5-gallon bucket. From one little piece of mycelium, or the oyster mushroom that you harvested from the store. So I love it. I love the low tech, no tech. This is one 5-gallon bucket. Let's see, and make 10 buckets, mushroom math. So this. We're on week 1, week 2, we have 10 buckets. What do we have on week 3? We have 100. What about week 4? 1,000. Week 5. It's time to build a new house. And I taught this method out in Oregon, and 1 year dry ones. Oyster mushrooms have twice the amount of protein that shiitake mushrooms. And not many people know that. So I think oyster mushrooms are a superfood. They're antiviral, they have a lot of good properties, and the mycelium can be used for microfiltration also. This was my first experiment with coffee, and here being this picture because you can see so you can see the coffee filters like lined up, these non-bleach coffee filters here. I filled it up, it got to the top, and then I just cracked the lid because mushrooms need oxygen. Okay, so I just cracked the lid, it was in the kitchen, and then I had to move it, so I screwed the lid on and I carried it to my lab and I put it up on the shelf and I forgot about it. And then about a week later, I came into my lab and there was a white lid on the ground sitting on the ground. And I'm like, what is that from? And I looked up and this was on my top shelf. This mushroom pushed the lid off the container. And then I did some research and found out that these mushrooms can push up to 20,000 times their own weight. So I keep one of these in my car. 40% of household waste can be used as a growing substrate for fungi and mushrooms, and 60% of schools and businesses can be used as growing material. This is all going to the land. We need to utilize and redirect this material and have fungi colonize it. And years ago, I was like growing mushrooms on everything, like paper, cardboard, and then even jeans. It was like the workshop, and actually had mushrooms growing off of my jeans, like this. Denim, and it's basically cotton, cellulose. So what is the overview here? How can you do something about it? So we have a waste or contaminated water. We have growing media, which could be paper, cardboard, wood chips, substrates, that. You can grow mushrooms on this. Now you can filter water through these containers, and then you can perpetuate. You can take these containers and make more containers. You make soil. Grow food, you take the plant waste and then you dry it and then you grow mushrooms back on it. Interesting. So from that one little tiny bubble of mycelium, think of it like a number. If I was to give you a little burning coal that was bright red and say, can you make a fire? Could you make a fire? How many people raise your hands? How many people can make a fire? I gave you a burning coal. How many people can make spaghetti? 3 people can make spaghetti. We should move on. That's just a brother. I'm talking to right now. Oyster mushrooms, if you were to just amplify that one little ember into mycelium in a bucket, you can now make all these beautiful bins full of buckets and start amplifying mycelium. They can be used for food and you can use it for building materials. Right now I'm working with Clemson University on different building materials, using mushrooms for clay and different composites. And there's my San Pedro watching over. Some of you know what it is. Some of you Google it. And so, and pink oyster mushrooms are probably one of the best and easiest mushrooms to start with. If you're researching a mushroom to start with mycorrhizal to break down things, pink oysters are the masters. They've got huge chemical key sets. They're very good at attacking molds and resisting like mycorrhizal, like trichoderm. So I love working with the pink oyster mushroom, and you can just simply just take the shredded office documents, and you can add some pink oyster mushrooms to them, and there you go. In just a couple days. This is 7 days later. It's amazing. And what about those dyes? You then it's extracellular is what it's called. They leave that outside of their bodies, they break it down, so they do not hyperaccumulate that material into the fruity bodies. That makes it safe, right? So there you go, you have your little burrito that you can make. I make little burritos all the time. I go out in the country in Jamaica, and I see some oyster mushrooms in Jamaica on a tree, and on a moringa tree, and I wrap it in cardboard. And there you go. I can clone it without a lab. And so I'm walking around with this power of mycelium that I can expand. And I teach this to kids. And I love it. I absolutely love teaching. And you should, if anybody can go to a middle school or a school and just teach the kids about fungi, because fungi is missing from the curriculum. You know, in up to grade 5, it says soil is non-living. That's the truth. Soil is non-living. 5th grade, right? And I taught these kids in Oregon, and I gave them a little piece of mycelium, and they wrapped it up, and you know, these little kids had this little burrito. There was 10,000 people there. And my book's running, this mother came storming up to me. And she had this burrito in a Ziploc bag. And she goes, "Did you give this to my son? And tell him to keep it under his pillow?" That's what I was like. I was out of mushroom fairy. And I was like, "I don't know, yeah." And she goes, and it had a name on it. She goes, "Did you tell him the name?" And I looked at it and it said Marley, like Bob Marley. And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Phew, I thought he was making it up." I didn't. She thought her child was nuts. And then I didn't see the kid, but behind the kid, behind the woman, the little giant came out like he was smiling. And then she gave him his burrito back. And then he turns, this is beautiful. He turned to everybody that was waiting in line, all adults, and he said, "I'm going to feed this mushroom to all the waste in the world." What have you done? I just started crying. I was like, yes! What a beautiful, beautiful little boy, you know? He told the adults he was going to feed this to all the garbage in the world. It was like watching the Lorax, you know? I can't watch that. It was just gorgeous, man. It was, and so then I started, man, this is an infection. How many of you are infected by mushrooms besides me? Come on, don't get it. This is like Mushrooms Anonymous. You're in a safe place, okay? Alright. Pizza boxes and everything. And just inoculate everything. Just be like a virus with shoes. Just, you know. Do you have spawn in your trunk? Why not? So I'm saying is that mushrooms are resilient, they're soil producers. I love growing mushrooms, and they are, listen, the upstate South Carolina, there's a major problem everywhere with soil production. And so we have to compost. So if you're gardening and you like to grow mushrooms, and you can just grow in a little, 5-gallon bucket or one of these 27-gallon bins, you can compost, you can add this to your soil, you can now make soil. And by doing this, what are we doing? This is like interactions. So mushrooms create octanol, which is a chemical, it's a fruity alcohol that comes out of your sweat. You ever notice when you work out, it smells a little sweet? You don't want to admit it. Is there a question right there, or are you just stretching?
Just to say, alcohol is the thing that attracts mosquitoes.
Yes. Yeah. And so alcohol, octanol, attracts mosquitoes, it attracts slugs. It attracts termites, it attracts worms, it attracts butterflies and bees. I have seen the most beautiful, I don't know, it's like a one-gram experience, but I'm like watching butterflies that land on mushrooms in Costa Rica, and they are just taking a nap on top of a mushroom, and their proboscis, in the curve where they feed the nectar, they are just sitting there. What? So what I'm saying is vermicomposting is actually a good idea with mycoremediation, because mycoremediation is not a complete process without bacteria. You cannot, and I cannot give mushrooms all the credit, and I would love to, but I am biased on mushrooms, but I do understand that it's like a relay race. So mushrooms can break up certain compounds to a certain point, and then you have to have bacteria take over the relay race of total bioremediation. And that's where worms are an excellent choice, because inside the gut of a worm, you have a bioreactor of different bacteria. And since worms are attracted to fungus, so you have the contaminant of interest in the substrate, the mushroom eats away at it or colonizes it, then the worms get involved. They eat that, and then inside the worm is like a bioreactor, and then you have true remediation. Boy, isn't it? Nature already figured this out. We just have to help them out. So I ordered worms, that's what if you ever want to buy me a birthday present, worms, not flowers. I'll make it that way. So, hey man, found worms. So worms, regular, so we got from that to this, is only just a few weeks. And then shortly after, you can ramp it up, and it really depends on the type of remediation you're doing. If you had contaminated soil, you would have to containerize the contaminated soil, or put a membrane down outside, and then put it at a layer of about a foot, and then introduce your mycelium. But this is containerized mycoremediation here. Right? And we did some testing at Clemson University with pesticides, atrazine specifically, and the atrazine did not translocate into the fruity bodies at all. It was actually reduced and isolated in the substrate, which is amazing. So that is a concern, because you don't have fruit on mushroom all contaminated media, and then what happens? A beetle or a bug or a fungus gnat eats it, and then a bird eats that, and now you have contamination into the food loop, into the food web. You don't want that. Yeah, so, and then you have this beautiful, beautiful soil at the end of the day, like microbial soil. And I'm a gardener too, so I love it. I introduced mushrooms to your garden. King Stropharia, one of my favorite mushrooms, and this is the wine cap garden giant. If you're wondering what to do with logs and debris, you can take the logs and cut them and make a little wooden frame, and then take the wood chips, and then you can make a little lasagna of cardboard and wood chips and spawn, and then you can fruit mushrooms off of that. Okay. Yeah. Especially around like different bushes and trees and shrubs, you can hold the moisture there, and it would make soil and attract different invertebrates and worms to fertilize your plants. Now, one of the things I don't like about fall is driving through cities like Atlanta and seeing bags full of leaves on the curb. Have y'all seen that? And they're all loaded too. It's like an advertisement for Lowe's or Home Depot. Bag of leaves. And I'm driving through there, and there's a reason they're called leaves. Thank you, I'll be here all week. There's a reason they're called leave them there. The trees are shedding them. They've been doing this for millions of years. And then we're going to scoop them away and take them somewhere else. And that's just ridiculous. So leave them there. But if you do break them up, put them around the bed. Just do something with carbon. God, that drives me nuts. Anyway, so leave them there. And there's a lot of mushrooms like fluids. If you're taking it, fluids are good mushrooms for leaf decomposition, things like that. So you can make a nice little fluid mountain and then distribute it around town. All about bombing town. Does anybody think I'm going to go and watch those? have a really good spot. Raise your hand. Where is it? Listen, mushroom people are the most loving, caring people on the planet, except for 2 weeks out of the year. And that is morale season. And they all carry knives. And they're always posting on Facebook, you know, it's like a hostage photo, right? I found the first morale, and it's like a newspaper with a date, just to prove that they were first. It's so weird. That's alright. Keep your metadata on because I'm clicking on your photos saying,
Let's turn off.
let's turn on, I know exactly where the GPS coordinates are, man. Just see stumps in this period. Anyway, this is a morale someone found, and they called me up and they said, hey, I think I found morels. They said, but they're too big. Because I think they're too big. And then he said the craziest thing ever. Can I show you where they are? And I'm like, you don't say that. I was like, yes, you're interested in me. So anyway, I went to this spot and there was 160 of these around one tree. One single tree.
What kind of tree?
It was a dying elm. Yeah, on a floodplain. Yeah, it was bizarre.
American or wind?
I don't know. It was so dead, I couldn't tell. But if we're in 220 that year, because we went back and did 60 more. And then the next year, it just went in total decline. And then there was none. So there was a peak. Right. So we have to wear camouflage too. Let's see. Anyway, so I was hunting morels, and then a couple years ago, I was on this dating app. Maybe we used a dating app? You wouldn't, did it? So I was like, I found someone, I was like, hey, this person might be eating mushrooms. So I was like, you know, do you like morels? You know, that's what I said. That's what I thought I texted. Right? Do any of you ever, does it ever autocorrect to something that you do? Are you ready? So I said, whoop, you know, the thing goes off, shh, you know, makes a nice and cool noise. Hey man, I mean, who doesn't like hotels? I was like,
And you just kept going.
I can go. I didn't notice. I mean, I have a couple of hotel spots we can hit that are close together. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. Who's that person with the groceries? Be careful when you're out of breath, man. Just check. All right, so yeah, the fluids are really good at leaves. There's Canisteroferia, and what's critical about fluids and Canisteroferia is that they are biologically dependent on bacteria to survive. They are composite organisms just like we are. They need bacteria to complete their life cycle. They cannot produce a mushroom without bacteria. So these are good mushrooms to look at for mycorrhizal because they have to recruit bacteria in their little sweat. Remember the sweat that you're swimming through? Right? And you're picking up little hitchhikers, those are the bacteria. They're selecting their fungal friends, their bacteria that they need to survive, and also to break down, particular contaminants of interest. So when I pick a mushroom in a contaminated environment, I save the stem base. Right? I cut it off and I clone the mushroom or I culture it, but I save. Look at that dirt in the bottom. Right? Do you think there's something biologically going on there that mushroom and that bacteria have figured out? That is gold. That is microbiological gold right there. So I save stem bases of mushrooms in contaminated environments, and I look at that, and then we have to straighten it out. The problem 97% of all the bacteria we try to culture out in the lab. So why bother? Why not let nature figure it out, plant the mushroom there, and let them collaborate, and in a beautiful collaboration, just figure it out. You just got to release fungi to the plant, right? You've got to let them do their work. Scientifically, it drives scientists nuts because we want a scientific paper, we want proof of this, that. We've got to have, we've got to have these species connection. It's not going to happen. So we have this devastating environments, the upstate South Carolina. In 1910, the topsoil was 12 to 15 feet deep. I imagine the areas of Asheville was that deep before it got wiped out. Right? It can take 500 to 600,000 years to make 1 inch of soil. Anybody have a calculator? 75,000 years to put it back. It just got wiped out. Right? Even us, agriculture, in the upstate South Carolina. I'm not talking about a hurricane, I'm just talking about gradual, just degrading the environment with agriculture and cotton and, herbicides and fertilizer. So what can you do? Like, this is a devastated environment. It's not going to recover that quickly. We have to chip it, we have to keep the carbon there. That's why we have to leave the leaves there. We have to keep this here. We shouldn't burn it. As I see all the time, driving down the street, big piles of timber just burning. Chip it, leave it, and let the mushrooms do their work. Right? Does that make you happy when you see that? Anybody?
Yeah.
Would you rather this? Alright, now calm down. Scary, don't stress it. Listen, when I see this, I see recovery. I see a mushroom doing its job, breaking down this tree, because that's what the tree wanted, just like a giving tree. That old book, Shel Silverstein, every single part of the tree. Selfless, right? Absolutely selfless. Making soil, mushrooms, making soil. That's the kind of woods that you want to be walking through with you and your children and your grandchildren forever. Right? So we have to prepare this. So, listen, I don't have cable, I told you, this is what I do on Friday night. And if there can be a sense of peace, right, and peace and love, damn, you can't buy love, but you can grow it. And it's beautiful to watch these shapes like grow out. I take these little shapes, and this is me amusing myself in the lab. It's not really amusement. It's just me, thinking of the future, being an optimist, that we can totally fix this place, right? As a group, as a community. So I also want to, if you want to take the phones out, I've got a few QRs that you might be interested in before I close. I do have a hurricane relief mushroom workshop coming up over in Asheville, December 7th. And if it's not for you, then post it on your social media and share it with somebody else, and because it's going to be awesome. During the week, my friend Scott Bunn from Treehouse Trade School, I'll share his contact in a minute. He's going to be milling wood for everyone, the locals, and the trees, and actually making wood to build new houses. And I'm going to be showing up on Saturday to use the other parts of the tree to grow mushrooms and show everybody how to filter water and how to grow mushrooms on the OSB board and all that other crap and all the other house debris that has adhesives and breaking things down and making things right. So that is awesome. I can't believe it. December 7th. That is my sponsor and also our work with Treehouse Trade School. Scott Baxter will be going to the event. He's giving a free workshop on billing starting December 2nd. I think he's going days before I arrive, and I show up on Saturday. So if you're interested in contacting Scott, take that. Now, if you want to get in touch with me, injected grapevine toothpicks, like little tiny holes with inoculants, and we put it in the base of grapevines, and they imparted a phytochemical response, and those grapevines never had fungal disease or bacterial ever again. It's insane. It's really cool. So I think that we need to isolate from healthy laura plants or avocados, you have to identify, and then you have to introduce them back into the tissue or the cuttings.
Can I be in touch with you?
Yeah, you can be in touch. We got one mushroom grow-u. Anyone else? Sam, are you waiting?
I was waiting to get contract.
Any more questions or concerns? You got any answers? Question over here.
Any help with mushrooms eating black mold?
Mushrooms eating black mold?
Yes.
Yeah, I just had a fungus eating a black mold in the lab the other day.
Really?
Yeah, it's awesome. So, again, it's like, this is what I do on the weekend. I just watch stuff. I make little gladiator matches. I look at that. What type of mushroom? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was an unknown. It's something I have to do with DNA. Listen, sometimes you just open a picture plate and then something shows up and you have no idea what it is and you see them battling it out. And it's unknown to science. So I have an isolate of some fungus killing the black molds on picture plates. And that's it. It's like more students should be just creating these like welcome mats, like build it, they will come scenarios, rather than killing fungus and making an extract and then isolating and seeing if that kills the black mold. That's not the way it works. It's behavioral guidance. That's where you're going to learn something.
Is there a mushroom filled mold?
Mushrooms that kill molds.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mycorrhizals out there. And I would say too that trichoderma is actually a good one because it's a mycoparasite. And we found it, we were at Art Sonny's house the other weekend. Scott, he's in construction, I'm helping him, mycologist on staff. When he ripped up the floor, and there was all green mold everywhere. And he goes, oh my God, there's mold. The homeowner was like, oh, there's mold. And I was like, no, it's a good mold. It's trichoderma. It's actually a mycoparasite, so it's going to eat the black mold. Oh, so it was good. So trichoderma good. You just have to know your molds.
Brad?
Yes, sir.
Talk for a minute or two about what you used to do with the Eastern area and your chicken coop.
Oh yeah, chicken. Yeah. Kingsford, which is this mushroom has an affinity for E. coli, which are coliforms. And that mushroom, remember the sweat they swim through, so it'll stun and kill coliform or E. coli bacteria. And E. coli is 50% protein by weight, so the mushroom stuns, kills it, and then it will consume it as a protein source and use it as a food source. So what I did was I put it inside my chicken run, and a little patient area, wood chips. A lot of people just have a dusty, dirty, soil floor. I put in inches of wood chips in each area. The chickens are running around. The worms are attracted to the mycelium, which is unfortunate. That's a really bad place to be a worm, right? They're like digging in, like the chickens are like going out. And what goes in the chicken must come out. And out come the coliforms. You can rinse it in grains, and then you have the mycelium capturing the coliforms before it can leave and get the surface and subsurface water and contaminate anything else. It's beautiful. And it's the best smelling. This is Chicken Magazine actually did an article on me. I was Mr. January. I know. It was a full outfit. So I was Mr. January, and no, it was about the chicken coop. They said, this is the best smelling chicken coop I've ever seen. what do you do? And then I put in